I want to start off with a story this morning. I want you to imagine a married couple. Married 10, 15 years, somewhere along those lines. And those of you who are married know exactly where I'm going with this, possibly. That's a tough time, okay? So they haven't really been connecting very well. Their kids are kids, and they take a lot of their time. The husband works long hours, and they just really don't feel like they're a couple right now. So lo and behold, trying to fix it, they plan a date, romantic date. Gonna go to the big city, watch a play, go out to a nice restaurant, and they make reservations, and it takes 3 months for them to get there. So lo and behold, the Saturday comes. Husband has to do some work out in the garage that morning. He gets done, comes in, gets ready, and they go to leave. As he's driving, he's very silent, and the wife is chattering like no tomorrow. All the husbands are laughing right now, okay? She is just going on and on and on about things, and he is really quiet. She asks, "What's wrong?" "Oh, nothing." Continues on. Just seems like he's focused on the road and not really focused on her, which, let's be honest, he probably should be anyway, but that's besides the point. So they go to the play first, and he just seems totally distant, not even there mentally. She's constantly making remarks about what's going on in the play, and he doesn't even respond to what she says like he normally was. And her mind starts thinking, what's wrong? What's going on? Why doesn't he want to talk to me? Those types of things. They go to dinner, same thing happens. He's just orders a steak, she orders her salad, because that's just the way we are. Not that ladies don't like steak, I'm not hating at all, just normally that's the way it is. And he just seems really distant, not very talkative, yes or no answers. You guys know in texts, if people are saying yes or no answers, they ain't into you, you know how that is, okay? Almost he's like leaving her on read, that kind of thing. And he just is not engaging at all. And her mind starts spinning even more. Is he seeing somebody else? Is he really working those long hours? Those types of things. As they drive home, she's trying to hide her tears as he's driving, totally oblivious to what's going on. They get home. Of course, it was supposed to be a romantic evening, so you know what romantic evenings end in. And she's upset because that's not going to happen. She's in the bathroom crying, drying her tears. He just gets ready for bed and lays there, his back's towards her whenever she lays down. She goes, "Good night, I love you." And he goes, "Love you too," like that. In her mind, she is what I call snowballing. You start a snowball and you roll it up, and if you roll it down the hill, it gets really big. That's why I call it that. He's cheating, it's over, he doesn't love me anymore, and she's almost sobbing in bed. And if you look inside his mind, he thinks, truck won't start, can't figure out why. I find it ironic that I fumble-farted through the announcements this morning because we're talking about communication this morning. It's or lack thereof. It's tricky, it's tough. When to say something, when not to. When to push send on that text or snap or DM, or when to hit backspace. It's tough to figure out when to talk and when not to. And I find it ironic that I'm giving this sermon because I have failed at this so much. I have what's called foot and mouth disease. It's awful, okay? For some of us, we want to say everything. For some of us, we don't want to talk at all. For some of you, being up here where I'm standing right now would be the worst thing you could ever do in your life. And for some of us, it depends on who we're talking to, right? Because our best friend, but somebody I don't know. And I feel like I need to explain the title of the sermon, Pass the Potatoes, Please. Allison had shared this with me, and it stemmed from whenever she went to church camp up at Epworth Forest. It's the United Methodist Church camp, if you didn't know that. And whenever she was there, they served meals Thanksgiving style. Everything's on the table, and you pass it around. And she was amazed the percentage of students that had no idea how to do that. How to pass the potatoes, please. She saw students getting up and reaching over people to grab what they wanted because they had never eaten that way before. And it's probably going to steadily get, because we're all busy. I get it. The majority of the time throughout the week, we maybe use our kitchen table once or twice, maybe. Maybe, that's a maybe. Okay, so I get that. So let's try to figure this out. Let's try to figure out this communication thing, okay? I've got 3 ways, different ways that I'm going to talk about that we communicate. The first one, obviously, is what I'm doing right now, talking, okay? And I realize we live in a world where, and I'm going to mention this, and you guys might groan, some of you might, but we live in a world where there's gender neutral and all that kind of stuff, and whether you're for or against that, I'm not going to talk about that. But I'm going to talk about men versus women and how we talk. Some of you are already chuckling inside a little bit, okay? And I always heard that women say 3 times the amount of words that men do in a day. I'd always heard that before. Who thinks that's a valid statement? Raise the hands. Women? Wow. I figured guys would be like, yeah, you know. They don't want to say it. So there was a study done, 2007, Time magazine, and they said that women, by this study, spoke 16,215 words a day. Everybody's going, wow, that's a lot, okay? But the interesting part of that is men spoke 15,669 words a day. That's only a difference of 546 words. Interesting. I never would have guessed that, by the way. I know I'm an abnormal guy. I like to talk a lot, okay? Everybody's out there going, okay? So that's one way to communicate, talking, okay? The next one I'm going to mention, and some of you are very well versed in this and some of you aren't, is online, social media, text messaging, direct message, that type of thing. That's a way of communication that's only going to get greater than less, by the way. And I found it interesting, and the Pew Research Center did a study on age groups and how much they send and receive texts in a day. And this kind of blew my mind a little bit. I'm going to point to you guys over here a little bit, because that's where the majority of the teenagers are this morning. You guys send and receive 67 texts a day. All of you are kind of going, that's low. Okay? But the interesting part about that is they were third in the amount of text. Everybody thinks teenagers are the ones who text and everything, but 18 through 24 were the most. They had 128. 25 through 34 have about 75. Then the teenagers come in at 67. And 35 through 44-year-olds send and receive about 52. 45 to 54-year-olds send and receive about 33 texts. And 55 and over do about 16 a day. And as I said, 16 a day, all of them over there going, I can do that in a minute. Trust me, I can too sometimes, by the way. So that's another way. So that's the second way we communicate as a society. The third way is one that you wouldn't normally think of, but it's interesting. It's nonverbal. According to a study, and it was done a long time ago, 93% of communication is nonverbal. 93. Which I find interesting because the way I stand, the way I use my hands, my tone, all of that is going to speak to you more this morning than my words. That's weird to me. That explains why whenever I say something nice to my wife and she goes, that was mean, it's because of my tone. It's kind of funny because 93% of all that communication, of that, 55% of that is body language. For instance, if I'm standing here and I go, what are you thinking? I'm upset, I'm angry, I'm restless, okay? If I sit down right here and just pouting, sad, upset, Some of you guys out there with your eyes closed, you're tired. Or I'm boring, one of the two. Okay? It's kind of interesting, okay? That's 55% of that 93. The other 38% is tone. For instance, the word shut up, okay, which was a bad word in our house until recently, by the way. But if you see a guy and a girl and they're teenagers, and he's saying something and she goes, oh, shut up, like that, she doesn't really want him to shut up, okay? Or if he's being verbally abusive and she goes, shut up, it's different, right? Said the same thing, but it's different. Now, I'm gonna pick on my family just a little bit because I got the microphone and I can. If I know my daughters, if they get really low, like mumbly, they are really upset. They don't want to talk, but their parents are making them. If my ears are bleeding because the sound is so loud, I know Tate's excited about something because he tends to scream whenever he gets excited. Whenever my wife gets quiet, it's time to run. Okay? Those nonverbal communications can speak heavily. So, explain 3 ways we communicate, but it doesn't take away the trickiness. It doesn't take away the toughness of all of this. So what do? Do we just sit there and not talk? Don't move. Nonverbal, okay? Do we just not communicate? I don't think so. That leads us to the scripture this morning, okay? And there's a bunch of proverbs in there, and I find it kind of interesting. I'm going to go out of order of what Bonnie read, okay? I'm going to start with the third one she read first, maybe the fourth one she read first. Proverbs 18:4, the words of mouth are deep. The fountain of wisdom is a gushing stream. How many of you all went swimming whenever you were about that tall? I know I did. What'd your parents tell you? Beware of the deep end, right? Don't jump in the deep end, right? Find it interesting that it said the words of the mouth are deep waters. Because deep end can be fun. Diving boards, slides, all that stuff. But it can be dangerous too. What we say can be awesome, but it also can be dangerous. There's 3 of these proverbs that kind of go together a little bit, okay? Whoever belittles another one lacks sense, but an intelligent person remains silent. Those who are kind reward themselves, but the cruel do themselves harm. And those who are kind reward themselves, but the cruel do themselves harm. They're very similar. And what they're talking about is kindness versus cruelness. And we all know that one time where we've opened our mouth and we knew what we were going to say was going to hurt the other person. We've all been there. We all know it. Whether it was through a text, a snap, verbal, nonverbal, road rage, the wrong finger stuck up, that kind of thing. All that stuff, we knew it was going to be offensive to the other person. But we also know those times whenever we've been kind to one another. Whenever we said something that we didn't have to say, but we said it anyway. That's what those things are talking about. The last proverb talks about soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. It's how we respond to questions. Parents, grandparents, have you ever asked a teenager questions that they don't want to answer? Something tells me the anger and wrath comes out after that. Right, ladies? I don't understand why you're asking me all these questions. Okay? It talks about how we deal with conflict. Because here's the thing. If somebody comes to me and is really angry with things, and I respond to anger, that's going to feed that anger. Gas, fire. But if I respond softly and with respect and with kindness, it turns away that wrath. They may still be angry, but it's going to put it out a little bit. It's how we respond to things. So what do we do with all this? How do we fix this? I think there's a couple things that God is trying to tell us this morning. One, even though communication is tricky, it's important. It's important to God and it's important to us. Way back in Genesis, God created Adam. He looked at Adam and said, "It is not good for you to be alone." So he created Eve. And I guarantee that was because so he could have somebody there for him, to talk to him. Husbands are sitting here going, "I wish she would talk a little less. It's okay." And I'm sure wives, you're probably sitting there saying, "I wish my husband would talk less sometimes." Okay? And it's all through Scripture. The book of James, towards the back of the Bible, talks about communication a lot. Verse 119, quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger. Chapter 3, the first part of chapter 3 is all about taming the tongue. Watch what you say. It can bring up the fire of hell, it says it in there. Okay, we need to watch what we say. Second thing I think God's trying to show us this morning is it has the power to build up and has the power to tear down. I guarantee whenever I say this, everybody is going to remember this. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words can never hurt me. Everybody heard that before? Who thinks that's the biggest line of bull they've ever heard in their life? Okay? They hurt. They do. Like the beginning of the story. The story I shared at the beginning about the married couple. Okay? If he would have just said, "I'm really upset, things aren't going well in the garage, I may not be as talkative tonight," it would have changed her whole perspective. Right? He should have talked. But guess what? She should have too. "Honey, I'm freaking out. Why are you not talking to me?" It's communication. It's opening up. There's a bulletin insert that I gave you guys. Looks like this. If you didn't get one, Brad's got some. I would love for you to take these home. Okay? Because it's a great reminder of how to talk to people. And I love how this included all these social media things on here. Okay? Because I think we need to think before we speak. Acronym. Is it true? Is it helpful? Is it inspiring? Is it necessary? And is it kind? Ladies, I'm picking on you guys this morning, sorry. Okay? If everybody in school used this before they spoke, how do you think Jay County would be different? Oh. Okay? Little uncomfortable question. If you did this, how would your life be different? A lot different. Sorry I'm picking on you so much. See, I'm used to speaking to you guys. These guys freak me out. Okay? So that's just something to help you guys. I wanted to make those copies. That way everybody can take one home. Hang it on your mirror, throw it away, whatever you do, because what you hear this morning, whether you use it or not, is totally up to you. Every time you come into church, every time you go into a classroom, the challenges that are put forth, it's totally up to you guys to decide whether you're going to do them or not. But you can better your lives if you do. Third thing that I think God's trying to tell us this morning. Conversations and communication are ways in which we tell stories and hear the stories of others. I think it's interesting that we all want to share our story. We all want our story heard. But 9 times out of 10, we don't want to listen to somebody else's story. Listening, which I didn't mention earlier, is a vital part of communication. And I hate it. Just being honest. I do. Because 9 times out of 10, whenever I'm talking to somebody, especially if they have a problem, I think I know what they need, and I hear a little bit of it, hear a little bit of their story, and I want to give them the advice right away. I don't want to sit there and hear them drag on for 10 minutes about something that they've already said. Okay? By the way, if you do that to me, I will listen to you as much as I can. Okay? But seriously, we all want to share, but we don't want to listen. I think it's interesting that, and this is not in my notes, I'll come back to that. Listening is very important, and here's the interesting thing about that. I remember when my kids are little, and I would hear Alexa and Noelle screaming back and forth at each other, and I would use this analogy. You know, I find it interesting that God gave us one mouth and two ears. Does that mean we're supposed to listen twice as much as we're supposed to talk? I'm not as dumb as I look. Okay? What would it look like in our lives if we were intentional with our communication? Not just our words, but our tone and our body language. What if we looked at every time we communicate as an opportunity to show God's love, grace, mercy to those we're talking to, whether verbally, nonverbal, or digital platform? What would it look like if no matter what you said to somebody, you put it through this filter? What if your grandparents wanted to tell you a story during Thanksgiving whenever they were young, and you actually sat there and listened? Not that you don't, I'm not saying you don't, but let's just say, and you were interested and you were engaging. And grandparents and parents, what if you actually sat there and watched that dumb TikTok video that the grandkids showed you at Thanksgiving? They are funny, by the way. It's a dumb app, but it's hilarious. Okay? I saw something on social media this week. It said, if you want to lessen your Christmas presents, bring up politics at Thanksgiving. I thought that was kind of interesting. See, I believe if we take a step back and not say every little itty-bitty thing that comes to our mind, because some of us have that problem, and instead think of others instead of ourselves whenever we're communicating. And I'm talking about in our world, whether it be at Jay County High School or your family or your church or your neighborhood. What if that person that has a totally different political view than you, what if you sat down and actually listened to what they believe instead of automatically judging what they think? I wasn't going to share this, but I'm going to. I grew up fairly conservative. I did. Monroe, Indiana, went to United Methodist Church. A couple weeks ago, I had coffee with a youth pastor who lives a homosexual lifestyle. It was a very interesting conversation. It was. I would consider him a friend now. And I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I took the time to listen to his story. Whether I agree with it or not, I'm not going to tell you either way, by the way. But whether I agree with it or not, I took the time to listen to his story. And I would hope he considered me a friend as well. We have a unique opportunity to show God's love whenever we communicate. Because I believe true communication, godly communication, must involve respect, love, mercy, and forgiveness. That's a tough one. May we show these in our lives. Amen.